Welcome. My name is Rafaela Basili. I'll be moderating today's event, Safe Streets in Cities. This webinar is part of the ITF Safe City Streets initiative. In the name of the ITF, I would like to thank FIA for funding this initiative. One quick announcement, as mentioned before, you can find interpretation available for both Spanish and Portuguese available on the button below. And for those who still do not know the Safer City Streets, this is a network for cities to share experience, data, with the aim of supporting better road safety policies. We currently have 48 cities that take part in the network, and today we will have the opportunity to hear from 2 of them. We already heard from London, Bogota, Fortaleza, and Buenos Aires in our past webinars. If you missed them, the recordings are available in our YouTube channel. The link will be available on this chat. Normally, the Safer City Streets have an annual conference in person, but this year it had to be postponed. So we hope with this series of webinars and other upcoming ones to keep the momentum for this knowledge exchange between cities, between road safety experts. And in this sense, I would also like to invite you all to read our recent report, which was made possible thanks to this network of road safety experts, including our panelists of today. The report is called Best Practice for Urban Road Safety, and as the name suggests, it draws lessons from cities that are working to reduce the number of road fatalities. Many of the inspirations and experiences that are available in this report are transferable to other cities, so I invite you all to take a look. The link to the report will also be available on the chat. And without further ado, I would like to introduce today's session on safe streets. This debate of today will be focusing on experiences of cities that are moving to a proactive approach on road safety. And what do we mean by that? Traditionally, we look at crash data to understand trends, to get indications of places that should be improved. But targeting only most dangerous locations reveals a problem. A road crash can take place anywhere, including locations where historically there have been none. And that is why many cities are now focusing on identifying road danger and adopting a systematic approach on their interventions. Cities are now recognizing that we shouldn't wait someone to be hurt on traffic to respond to that. Instead, we should identify where a collision is likely to happen and prevent that. On our first webinar session, Stuart Reid from TfL, from Transport for London, explained how London is already adopting a predictive model. And today we'll have the opportunity to hear more from this topic from 2 other cities. I would like to introduce our 4 panelists. We have from Rotterdam, Renko Smith, Road Safety Advisor from the city of Rotterdam. Arjan No, Data Scientist Lead from Doc Data Netherlands. And from New York City, we have Rob Viola, Director of Safety Policy and Research from the Department of Transportation, and Seth Hostetter, Director of Safety Analytics and Mapping, also from New York City DOT. Thank you all for joining this event and sharing your experience with others. Before we start with the presentations, one quick announcement to our attendees. You can send your questions to the panel via the Q&A tool. My colleague Alex will select some of them to be addressed to our panelists by the end of this session. So I would like to invite Renko and Arjan to share their screen and start their presentation. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Rafaela. Hello, everyone, live from the Netherlands. My name is Remke Smit, and I'm coordinating the road safety program for the municipality of Rotterdam. Today, I will tell you everything about our risk-based road safety model, and I will do that together with Arjan Knol from the Dog Data company. So let's start with the motivation, why we actually built the road safety model. It has everything to do with the fact that Rotterdam is growing. City densification has an impact on the mobility in the city. We see more road uses and also different kinds of transport modes, like micromobility. And this all comes with risks for road safety. And we need to eliminate those risks. That's the reason that we started developing the risk-based road safety model, besides the fact that we already have to deal with road safety issues. We already have more than 1,000 casualties in traffic per year. So it's also good to understand that the road safety model is part of our road safety policy. The last decade, road safety has improved in Rotterdam, but the numbers of casualties and fatalities are still far too high. And we need to protect our vulnerable road users like pedestrians, like cyclists, and the older people and the younger people. And the reactive approach, by only analyzing traffic accident reports, does not give us the insights to prevent those accidents and to protect our vulnerable road users. So that's exactly the reason why the road safety model is part of our new proactive road safety policy, the Rotterdam Safe Forward policy. So the road safety model helps us analyzing unsafe locations in a different way. And the initial purpose of the development was to link historical traffic accidents data to road futures and to see what it brings. But soon it went on to a more predictive and self-learning model with a lot of more functions. And how we build this model is a thing that Arjan will tell you more about. I come back to you later about how we use the model in practice.
Yeah, thank you, Remco. Yeah, I will give a high-level approach of the road safety model, so I will not go into too much detail. That won't be the point for this presentation. But just overall, the approach of this project and the road safety model is that we started, as most data science projects are conducted, by collecting data on traffic accidents and data on roads. And then we have used a machine learning algorithm to predict accidents or high-risk locations, road sections, and junctions as well. Yeah, this also enables to conduct what-if analysis. So, for example, we could ask the algorithm or the model, if we would, for example, cut down some trees or lower the maximum speed, what would then be the risk score for such a location? Yeah, so this is the overall approach of the project. Well, then coming to data, we have coupled quite a lot of data from quite a lot of open data sets as well as data sets from the municipality of Rotterdam itself. Again, without going into too much detail, for now we have over 300 variables for each road section and junction. So for example, infrastructure data, we have coupled the road width, the curvature, the maximum speed, but also objects such as if the traffic bumps are placed on the road section or not. Also usage and behavioral data such as traffic intensities, actual speeds driven, and also sudden braking movements from floating car data. Surrounding data, demographic data, vehicle ownership, but also if there's a shop or many shops in the vicinity of a road section or schools, for example. And finally, we have coupled subjective data. So these are reports of civilians that have reported that a certain road section is unsafe, and also why they feel it is unsafe. Well, most of this data we have used for the predictive model, specifically the infrastructure data, and the subjective data is only to validate. Yeah, and the road safety model, without again going into too much detail about machine learning and algorithms and everything, a simplified example would be, well, we have two road sections, road section 1 and 2. The first one has a maximum speed of 50 kilometers per hour. Actual speed driven is 35 kilometers per hour, and it has traffic bumps. And the road section 2 has the same maximum speed. However, the actual speed driven is a bit higher with 55 kilometers per hour, and there are no traffic bumps. Combining this data with the the target variable, this is called, with the incidents that have happened on these road sections, the model is able to provide risk scores. Section 1 would get a low risk score, and section 2 would get a high risk score. Validation, without going too much into the numbers, each road section gets a risk score from 1 to 5, from very low to very high. And when we look at the data, we can see that the number of accidents and the number of subjective reports increase with higher predictive risks. So that overall is quite a positive validation. And the data shown here is data from a test set. So this is data the model has not seen before. The model is trained on other data. And finally, I would like to tell that the model provides local advice. We use a technique called Shapley values. So for each road section and junction, we can provide insight in factors that contribute most to high risk scores. And this can give advice for road improvements. So going back to Remco.
Yes, thank you, Arjan. There's an app for that. Of course, I would say there is an application. And this application is very useful for our municipal traffic engineers. It provides clear advice of what roads are unsafe and why they are potentially unsafe. So this is the user's landing page. You see the area of Rotterdam, and you see the road sections and intersections in different colors. The green and the orange colors are the lower risk rates, and the red and black colors stand for the higher risk rates. So every user is able to select the individual road section. Next slide, please. Every user is able to select an individual road section, and they immediately see the explainable indicators. For example, is it the average speed of the traffic that determines the high risk score, or is it the amount of traffic, or has it something to do with the road features, for example? So the users are also able to use Street View for expert judgment, and they can filter on specific risks, like, next slide, please. In this example, you see risks, speeding risks. Users are able to see locations where we have to deal with speeding problems in Rotterdam. So that's very useful. And in the other example, you see some spots where we have to deal with unsafe locations for cyclists. And as you see, it's are a lot of spots. So we have work to do, as you can imagine. Overall, the application is really helpful in giving good advice for redesigning projects. The roundabout in this example was completed last month and is already in use on the street. And the advice from the model was that we had to improve the road safety for cyclists. And that's exactly what we did on this intersection, because we built a roundabout and the situation for cyclists is a lot better right now. So this brings us to the conclusion. The road safety model enables us to proactively identify and analyze unsafe locations. And in addition, it provides clear advice of measures that can be taken on the street to improve road safety. And the nice detail is that last year we won with this model the National Traffic Engineering Contest in the Netherlands, which we're really proud of. And so this was our presentation. I think there will be some space left for questions. I would like to thank ITF for the opportunity to share our experience with the road safety model and the use of self-learning algorithms in general. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Remco and Arjan, for this presentation. It's very good to see how you translated such a complex model into a very clear presentation. I'm sure we'll have many questions for you, but we'll jump into New York City now, and then we'll have the debate. Just a quick reminder for our attendees, Please feel free to send questions using the Q&A tool. By the end of the session, we'll select some of them to our debate. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks to Rotterdam, great presentation. So my name is Rob Viola. I'm the Director of Safety Policy and Research at New York City DOT. I'll be talking about our approach to systematic and proactive safety, just looking at a number of programs, projects, treatments, and how we deploy them systematically throughout New York. I should say from the start that we're not employing a predictive model the way that Rotterdam is. This is something we actually built a number of years ago, and our model that we built was pretty good at predicting injuries and where mimicking the crash patterns that were existing. But we were never able to get it to the point of the what if stage and the advice for road improvements. And that's really what we wanted to get out of it. I think we were missing, we don't have good pedestrian data and good bicycle data. So I think these were two of our missing links, so to speak. But your presentation was inspiring. I think maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and try to do that again. So, all right. So, just in terms of our top level planning process, this is what drives our Vision Zero program. It's our priority locations. So this is areas, corridors, and intersections that constitute the places that are most dense with pedestrians killed or severely injured, so pedestrian KSI. For example, the corridors shown here, 7% of the mileage of the city, but it's 50% of pedestrian KSI. We use pedestrian because that's the majority of our road fatalities. So that drives everything that we do. But in the spirit of what Rafaela was speaking about, this is mainly not a look at specifically where a particular fatality or even a particular severe injury occurred. These are areas that are rich with these injuries or particular corridors, and then we're kind of aggregating all those events to the corridors. So when we deploy things to these areas and to these corridors, it's usually done systematically, not really thinking that, okay, it needs to only be at this spot or this spot where the injuries were concentrated. So, we've had a lot of success in this targeting mechanism, seeing a 36% decline in pedestrian fatalities at priority locations since Vision Zero began back in 2014. So this is great to see, and it's actually counter to the trend in the rest of the United States, where pedestrian fatalities are actually on the rise. So we've done pretty well just kind of saturating these locations, these geographies with changes. 85% of the intersections have seen some kind of an engineering treatment. More than 75% of the corridors have seen something since the start of Vision Zero. So that's 450 safety engineering projects, 600 miles of corridors retimed for 25 miles per hour. So this is when Vision Zero began, our citywide speed limit was lowered from 30 down to 25. This enabled a lot of design changes, and since then we've been slowly retiming all the traffic signals in the city for that 25 mile per hour timing progression. So encouraging drivers to drive at that speed when they hit the green lights. And then also another proactive program that's come since the beginning of Vision Zero is and something that came specifically really from Seth, who's on the call today, is our proactive warrant analysis program. So this is basically how traffic signals get installed in New York. In the bulk of signals that we have installed, and I think this is true in the rest of our country as well, tend to be driven by requests where a community member identifies what they think is a dangerous location, and we study it. What we've started doing is actually mining our crash data for locations that already qualify to receive a traffic signal, and kind of putting those in as requests, qualifying in terms of crash data. There's other qualifications as well. And we've seen a lot of success with those, with most of those requests being installed. So we'll be continuing that program moving forward. Another big systematic rollout that we're doing is our leading pedestrian interval program, the LPI. This is a great program in a lot of ways. This is mostly targeted to those priority corridors. And now it's become pretty much standard anytime a new corridor is retimed via the traffic signals. So just to explain what it is, although most of the audience might know this already, it's a pedestrian head start, 7 to 10 seconds. So where the pedestrian gets the walk signal and the traffic is held, giving the pedestrian a chance to either cross the street completely or just be in the roadway and establish their presence. And this is, so we're targeting this to locations that are just high in injuries in general, corridors that are high in the aggregate for injuries. But this is really targeting a specific type, specific crash type. This is a turning crash, where you're crossing, the car turns into you, and it's a failure to yield crash. The vehicle doesn't yield to the pedestrian when they have the right of way crossing in the crosswalk. So we identified that this was a major part of our crash problem and our fatality problem, especially for older New Yorkers in New York City, and have elevated it as something that we want all our design solutions to be addressing. So that's why we've had such a big rollout with the LPIs. So you can see, before Vision Zero began, we were only doing a handful each year, and now we're doing about 1,000 each year. So really, we've moved towards this very specific, targeting it to very high crash locations, turning it into a design standard, and at some point, it will be at every feasible location. And these are great because they're cheap, they're almost invisible. They don't really have an effect on traffic in terms of slowing people down, and we've seen 35% reduction in pedestrian severe injuries at these spots. Another systematic program that we're working on is our turn calming program. It used to be called the left turn traffic calming program. It primarily hits locations that have historically had at least a baseline level of left turn injuries for pedestrians and bicycles. There's a pretty low floor to qualify for one. Of course, try to target it to the highest locations. But this is, again, it's something that's very, very cheap and easy to deploy. So we're rolling it out on a much larger scale, about 100 locations per year that you could do with more like heavy engineering treatments. And you see a map of where they're going in across the city. And it's really, we've started experimenting with a number of different elements, but what it's whittled down to now is rubber speed bumps, install a little bit of markings sometimes, installed either as a wedge or a box that you need to turn around, or the rubber speed bump right on the double yellow line, the center line. Might not be always a double yellow line in Europe, I think. But the center line dividing traffic, so forcing vehicles to turn around that mini speed bump, almost like a mini median. But since you can mount it, we're able to be very aggressive with it and put it in places where trucks will run over the bump, but passenger vehicles will turn around it. So we've seen speeds go down by, turn speeds go down by about 50% at these locations. Fantastic. Pedestrian injuries decreasing by almost 20%. So we're very happy with the results we're getting, and especially at such a low cost. And then this is the most one of the jewels in our crown, so to speak, of programs that we've been rolling out on a systematic basis. Our speed camera expansion. This is automated speed enforcement, which I think is more widespread in Europe than it is in the United States, where it's actually illegal in a number of places in America, like Texas and California. But we were able to get a program up and running a few years ago, back in 2014, and since then we've issued about 10 million violations. It's been pretty effective, dropping speeds by about 3/4, speeding by 3/4, and injuries going down almost 20%. So, but where we really had to get sophisticated about thinking about how we were going to roll out this program came last year, because we became the dog that caught the car, so to speak. We finally got this big approval for an expanded program, and we went from 200 camera locations to 2,000 that we had to do by the end of 2021. So needed a prioritization scheme for how to do that, about 40 to 60 cameras per month. So of course we wanted to look at reducing injuries. That's the whole idea here, injuries and fatalities due to unsafe speed. So our crash reports don't have good information on speed data. It's probably pretty common everywhere. So we combined our crash data information with speed data from our city fleet. So that's telematics data. So all of our city vehicles have a device installed collecting braking information, turning information, speed information. So we were able to get a snapshot on speed for the entire city, and then look at crashes, at killed or severely injured crashes that occurred during the time the cameras can run. So that's 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And then combining that with the maximum speed we had from the city vehicles. Now you can see from the maps that speeding and injuries don't always overlap. There are lots of places in New York and probably in any dense city where injuries are going to be high, but speeds are going to be low because of exposure, because of chaotic driving conditions. So we wanted to get the best overlap between those two data sets, so these cameras would be as effective as possible. So combined speed and injuries into one rank, assign that to each segment in the network. And we had some constraints here because we wanted the program to be everywhere, as much geographic equity as possible, while targeting the behavior we wanted to target. So no school was going to get 2 cameras until, I should step back for a second. See, here it says no school receives 2 cameras. This is a school-based program. So the idea is that the cameras are going in a quarter mile around a school. It's a school safety program, essentially. So no school receives 2 cameras before all schools have 1. No corridor has more than 1 camera per mile. So we basically pick a starting place, say nearby the school, within a quarter mile, ineligible for the next camera. All blocks covered by this school, ineligible, and then all blocks around a mile from the corridor are ineligible, and then repeat picking like the highest ranked locations and moving through the street network until we get to our goal of 2,000 cameras. I mean, I think our first goal was 750, and then we're running it again right now. So hopefully that wasn't too detailed, but it's kind of a nice little wonky thing to share with all the professionals in the crowd. So that's it from me. Thanks so much for listening, and I guess we're going to move on to the question and answer section.
Yes, that's it, Rob. So now we start our conversation. Thank you very much. So I would like to start asking you both. We have a common point here. Both cities are using speed data to understand behavior and use this information together with crash data to identify, for instance, high-risk locations. And that's, of course, a very valuable information for policymakers, but that could also be an important information for citizens. So my question for you is, do you have any initiative that would focus on sharing this type of information of roads that are more or less safe to your citizens?
Well, we certainly share crash data with our citizens, and so both in a raw form that can be downloaded and researched, but then we also have a number of up maps that are updated regularly, and and statistics that are available online. So we've been pretty good about sharing that over the last, since Vision Zero began. We became a lot more transparent with that. We have not shared speed data with the public in that way. It's more of a new data set that we're starting to use just for planning purposes. That's something we would consider, but we haven't done that yet.
Okay. And in Rotterdam, do you have any experience on that?
Yes, we have. We're thinking about how we can use the road safety model for citizens. But good to understand that it can be very dangerous to share information. As a municipality, we can be held responsible if anything happened on a road that is potentially safe by the road safety model. But Arjen and I are going to discuss a pilot to test a safe route application with a school. As we told, our road safety model can calculate the safest routes, so also for school children. And together with the school, we want to test if this will work. And we want to start with a pilot in the next couple of months.
Thank you. That's very interesting. I'm sure there is a lot of people attending that would be interested in having this information by hand. And then I would like also to ask you about challenges or difficulties into driving into a more proactive approach, because of course politicians are usually more prone to a reactive approach where you would treat a hotspot with any specific intervention and you would have results, good results and positive results from that. But we know that we need long-term intervention, systematic and preventive approach. So how it was for you to implement this type of initiative? There was any challenge, any lesson that you would like to share with everyone?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. And I can explain how we did this in Rotterdam. We organized a technical session with the Rotterdam City Council. And in a specially organized evening, we gave a presentation and had a discussion with the local politicians. We have made it clear that it is better to look at risks in advance than at the cause of accidents afterwards. And the only way we can prevent accidents, we think. And politicians agreed with that, and we're also very impressed by the innovation of the road safety model.
So yeah, this is something, of course, that we experience as well. our interventions and our projects used to be much more focused on individual fatality locations and high profile crashes. And I think what we've done is kind of an all of the above approach. We continue to be responsive when certain events happen, and we'll sometimes put in a project or react at a certain spot. We try to do that in a way that maybe is putting in a project that we already knew would be a good idea for the area, that we had some planning around it and not be just completely improvisational. But then also at the same time that we're continuing to be responsive, the agency also does these systematic approaches that are based, not really on individual spots, but areas and corridors and rolling out treatments across the city. And we've been able to get a lot of buy-in from politicians, from city council, from the mayor on those initiatives too, because they also, if structured properly, you can do a great press release and announcement around them. And there can be, almost a ribbon cutting on the launch of your speed camera program and these other things that are less just attacking one single spot where someone was killed. We're taking that kind of dual approach, I think. That's not. Oh yeah, go ahead, Seth.
I would just add that you can take the kind of reactive approach and look for contributing factors that are environmental to that event, and then take that and apply it programmatically. So the left turn traffic calming program essentially came out of something like that, where we would find a location that people had been complaining about, that maybe there was an event, and we would look at the kind of geometric configurations and other factors, and then turn that into a program where we would find other locations that had similar characteristics and could use the same treatment. And you can take the kind of reactive approach and broaden it to not just where people are complaining, but where there are other risk factors that match it.
Thank you. Well, we are talking about politicians, how to convince politicians to adopt such an approach. But in the case of New York City, I imagine you also had some opposition to the speed camera program. Usually this type of initiative sometimes bring citizens to be against it. We discussed that in our past webinar about speed. Maybe you can share some lessons and insights from that.
Well, I think we've actually been fairly lucky in New York City that we are much more similar to a European city in that most people don't own a vehicle. Most people take transit. Almost everyone is a pedestrian. And so we did have opposition to the program, but it's been isolated in certain outlying neighborhoods. The core of where population is really concentrated in the city has really embraced it. But I think we took a very slow and conservative approach to how it was rolled out. So I think that's one of the reasons why it went smoothly for us. We started small. The whole program is structured around protecting children and school safety. And there was a very restrictive rule for where cameras can go when the program started. Quarter mile in either direction from the entrance to the school. So that's that didn't give us that many spots to put a camera. Then we're only giving a summons if you are 11 miles per hour over the speed limit. So back then the speed limit was 30, so you had to be going 40 miles per hour. That's actually pretty fast. I can't do the kilometer conversion in my head, but that's fast. And the other thing is it's a $50 fine, which is is not a lot of money compared to a normal speeding ticket that you would get if a police officer pulled you over. That would be $150. So roughly the price of a nice meal out is the ticket. So I think all those things, and the fact that it's automated enforcement, so that it's not biased enforcement, targeting particular neighborhoods and particular people, which of course is a huge conversation going on in the United States right now. So yeah, I think there's some good lessons learned there.
So I have another question for Rotterdam, for Renko and Arjen regarding your model. I can see there is a lot of interest on that. Cities are asking how to build such a model, or what it takes to build such a model. So my first question would be, how do you evaluate the transferability of this model? Other cities could use the model you already built. And then if not, for instance, would you highlight what would be the most important variables for this model to run, to give some hints on where cities should start?
Yeah, so maybe I can answer this question. Yeah, so basically on a national level, the model is quite well transferable at the moment for other municipalities and provinces as well. So we have in development a light model, we call it, a light model purely based on nationally available data. This model is then, when it's completed, it will be completed in a couple of months. It's available for all municipalities in the Netherlands. And also we provide custom work to add specific data for a specific municipality. And on an international level, so for example, for municipalities in other countries, I think the model would be certainly possible to build. When there is data available on accidents, on major road characteristics, such as maximum speed, and also you need traffic intensities. That's an important aspect. So you don't need as much data as we have coupled for Rotterdam, but yeah, we need quite a lot of road characteristics. Accident data is absolutely necessary, and traffic intensities is nice to have, I would say. Does this answer your question, Rafael?
Yes. And then, for instance, if there is any change on the roads, how do you update the model? For instance, if you reduce a speed limit, is it easy to be updated or not?
Yeah, we have written the code in such a way that it's quite easy to update on a yearly basis. So when new data is available, for example, traffic accident data in the Netherlands is made public, open data each year. And also road characteristic data as yearly snapshots. So it's basically clicking on a mouse button, and then the scripts will run and update all the data that is available. And then we retrain a model and implement it again. So yeah, it is some work, but it's not that difficult to update the model at the moment.
Yeah, the difficulty is more related to gathering all this information and putting it to the model. We know from the Safer City Streets members that many struggle to get speed data. That's now a challenge for many cities. So maybe New York City could share some recommendations for cities that want to start collecting and using speed data, how it was for you.
So yeah, the speed data that we're getting, and I'd be interested to hear if this is the same for Rotterdam or if they have some other source, it is almost just a happy accident that we realized that with these telematics devices were going into our city vehicles as a safety measure, to monitor drivers and to, even to discipline people that were doing things that they shouldn't be doing. We realized we had this comprehensive aggregate source of speed data. Our city vehicles go everywhere on every block, of the city. It's just a question of, does it take them a month to do that or 6 weeks? So, so we had one vendor. Now we have a new vendor that we just started working with about 1.5 years ago. And they've developed a pretty sophisticated tool for us to look at speeds on any block in the city, look at before, after, and it's going to generate not just speeds for safety purposes, like a spot speed, but also travel time speeds. So for transportation purposes, for planning projects. So yeah, and what was in the first vendor we were using, it was only our own vehicles we were getting data from. So that's okay, but there's going to be some bias there, right? What's great about the new vendor we're working with is they are giving us our own data aggregated, but also all the other private sector companies that they work with that are moving through New York City. So they give us that anonymized, combined with our data. So, so it's a very large sample set now. It's probably like 50,000, 75,000 vehicles moving through the city at any one time. So it's, this is reliable information. So every city doesn't have a big fleet, or maybe won't be able to get this deal. But I think that this is kind of the future of this particular metric. Is either you are generating it through your own vehicles, or you can purchase it from one of these companies. Yeah, it's obviously just the probe solution is so much more cost effective than setting up 20,000 sensors around your city and then trying to extrapolate out from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. I see we have many questions from our attendees. Alex, do you want to share with us?
Yes, thank you, Rafaela. We've got plenty of questions indeed for both Rotterdam and New York City. I'll start with one, since Rob was talking about their source of telematics data. Rob, did you observe speeds going down with the speed data you collect after speed cameras were installed?
So that's something we are just about to start studying. We know speeds went down. Well, actually, okay. So yeah, that's two questions, right? We actually know speeds went down after cameras went in because we were able to see the drop in speeding violations as each camera was installed. So we know that. But in terms of kind of speeding nearby, speeding on the corridor, that first telematics vendor, they didn't give us enough data for us to do that. Who we're working with now, we are going to be able to do those before after studies, and we're working with an academic partner that's going to be looking at that pretty extensively. So yeah, we're very interested, since we've done this big expansion, we're very interested in the network effects. So we know, okay, you put in one camera, it has that effect on speed right there, but what about nearby? And what if, a nearby camera is here versus here versus here? What are the network effects of how you're governing speed with these devices? So that's what we're going to be looking at next.
Thank you. Good luck with that. A question now for Remco, I think. It's about cycling data. Since you showed the example of an intersection that's been redesigned for cyclists. So what kind of cycling data do you use primarily in the model? What kind of cycling data has most predictive power? And I imagine you collect cycle flows. How do you collect those cycle flows on every link in the city?
Yes, good question, Alex. We have different kind of cycling data. First of all, we have our own cycling predictive model with a lot of data about some collecting points all around the city. The data we collected, and we set up a model with the cycling flow per road section. And also we have data from the wideness of the cycling infrastructure. So we can compare the cycling intensity with the width of the cycling infrastructure, and we can we can investigate or the cycling infrastructure is sufficient to have the cycling intensity on a good way.
Alex, sorry, you're muted. We couldn't hear
Sorry,
you.
thank you, Rafaela. Remco, another question for you, please. Many cities, many people on the chat are asking how much time does it take to develop such a model? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yes, we're developing, we started developing in 2017. So it takes a while, but of course we had to develop new codes with the dog data company, and it takes around 2 years to build up the model as it is right now.
Thanks. And a question for Arjan now. Some people are asking, why did you make the choice of machine learning as opposed to more traditional choices such as statistical regression models, for instance? Did you experience problems such as overfitting or instability?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, we have tried regression and more classic statistical methods as well, but they didn't perform that well as machine learning methods. So it's basically a pragmatic decision why we have chosen machine learning. Yeah, and we do have problems with overfitting, and yeah, then it's a question about selecting a good training set and yeah, feature selection. So I think in the end, we have tuned the model enough without going into too much details about all the statistical and machine learning stuff, that it's performing quite well at the moment without too much overfitting.
Cool. And you said in your presentation that you used a separate set of data for the training and for the testing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is best practice, I imagine.
Yeah, we have a training set from data for 2014 till 2017, and then the test set is the year 2018 at the moment. 2019 it is now. And yeah, we also make different combinations of training and test sets to check for robustness of the model. So is it performing still as well with different test sets?
So with machine learning, sometimes people consider it as a black box, and to some extent it is. But you said you've been able to extract some insights from it, such as what to do analysis, what to change on the road to make it less risky. Were you able to measure how much predictive power speeds are having, actual observed speeds?
So actual driven speeds, they are quite high in the overall variable importance. So actual driven speed is an important factor. It correlates quite strongly with traffic accidents, you could say. Yeah.
Okay. And do you collect data from sensors on vehicles, such as accelerometer data or odometer speed data, the kind of data that Rob was mentioning in New York City, telematics data?
We have included its floating car data from an insurance company about a safe driving application it is. And they provide data on actual sudden braking behavior, for example. How much sudden braking events have we seen in the past year on a certain road section? So this is interesting data. However, we have not trained the model with this. It's only visible via the dashboard application at the moment. But telematics data, Remco, I'm looking at you at the moment.
No, not telematics data specifically, no.
I have one last question before I get back to Rafaela, if that's okay. Maybe one from Remco. Do you consider you've benefited a lot from open data from national data sources in this experience? And if so, which are the data sets you you benefited the most from?
Yeah, that's a very good question with what is actually the best data set in our model. I think it's an open data source that we called, that it's an open data source, which is, we can use it, the whole country can use it, and it contains road features and about, yeah, specifically the features of the road, and this, yeah, this really contributes to the results of the model.
Thank you.
So I'm afraid our time is up. We are approaching the end of this session. So first of all, I would like to thank you all for joining, and especially the speakers for sharing all these experiences and insights. Alex, if you could please go back to our slides. Thank you. So once again, I invite you all to read our new report on best practice for urban road safety. We have another report, a forthcoming report that will be launched. And we are preparing a webinar to share findings, insights, and more information on that too. Alex, could you please go further with the slide just to share? Yeah, so that's the forthcoming report we are preparing. And we aim to have another webinar on the 23rd of November to share more information from this study. If your city wants to become a member of the Safer City Streets, please feel free to contact the ITF. There is information from myself and from Alex in the ITF website. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining. Have a very nice rest of the day.